something we have to worry about going forward? Or is all this just a response to a strong economy, building up demand for, well, limited supply of lots of stuff? Let's go to Michelle Snyder, the Managing Director of Market Gauge Group. My friend Alan Lashinsky, Fox News contributor. Last but not least, David Sacco, practitioner in residence of finance and economics over at New Haven University. Professor, I ended with you, if you don't mind if I begin with you then, and that is how transitory this might be, that this is really what happens when economies pick up steam. I think it's a bit of a leap to blame Joe Biden for my pork and chicken prices doubling. There could be other factors there, but I am just wondering what you make of this and how long it lasts.
Well, inflation is just the result of too many dollars chasing too few goods. And when demand was reduced because of the pandemic last year, the government stepped up with fiscal policy and extraordinary monetary policy. And now that consumer demand is back, right, we've had essentially a V-shaped recovery, at least on that front. There are too many dollars chasing these goods. And as the demand comes back, it probably makes sense for the government to pull back both on the fiscal side and on the monetary side. So, as long as they continue to spend money and have an easy monetary policy, it's going to put pressure on the general price level, and it will continue, I believe.
All right, that is a fear, Michelle. And one of the things that has come up is that the Federal Reserve has to intervene, maybe start raising interest rates to slow this down. Now, the Fed has made clear, though, that for the time being, it's putting its highest priority on jobs and the economy allowing to grow. I don't know what the trigger point is, whether they reverse that, but where are you on this?
Well, it's definitely parts of what they're saying is transitory is true. Most likely, some of the used car numbers that came out, the car rental numbers, the airfare, the hotels, that was 49% of the core inflation, will be somewhat transitory as things continue to open up and then we start settling down. But my concern really comes back to the Fed in that whatever QE taper has been talked about, we're actually seeing the reverse. There's been a huge amount of bond buying. And on top of that, we're seeing the yields drop. So you take that and you put that on the side. What you also have going on here is a tremendous rise in food. And I've always felt for about a year now this would be a food-driven inflation environment. And if that continues, not only are we going to feel it from just our own pocketbooks when we go shopping, but at some point now that type of inflation is really going to take hold, and that's where the Fed has to come in, and that's where the talk of stagflation as opposed to recession really starts to get on my mind.
Yeah, where, the economy is slowing down, but prices are doing just the opposite. A lot of Republicans have linked the two to say that this president is another Jimmy Carter. The last time that happened to that degree. Adam, I'm just wondering, though, if the markets are panicked about this or sensing that we're entering another 70s inflation spiral, they have a weird way of showing it. I believe the S&P 500 hit a new record yesterday. The bond yields are actually going down a little bit. So what is the market telling? Not that it's always right, but what is it telling us right now?
Well, that's exactly right. The market is passing its judgment, which is that this is transitory, that what we're seeing is largely or even overwhelmingly a function of what economists call the base effect, namely that the economy was shut down a year ago. So you should expect that since it is not shut down now, that we would see rapid increases in prices. The other thing is Mitch McConnell said one thing that wasn't factually correct. He said that the Biden administration is blunting the economy. Well, whether or not you agree on what the Biden administration is doing, the economy isn't blunted. And that's your point. The economy is growing robustly. The market sees that. And I think that's why we see a lot of this confusion right now. Because there's no question we're seeing inflation. The question is, how long does it last? And if you think it doesn't last long, you're in the market buying stocks.
If you think about it, David, inflation can only last as long as average folks are willing to pay more for the goods that have been running up. Is there a point where they don't? And are you worried about that?
That's a great point. I mean, asset inflation, markets don't necessarily have a problem with asset inflation, but consumers have a problem with inflation when it comes to the ordinary goods that they use every day. And the whole point of the fiscal policy and the easing of the monetary policy during the pandemic was to make lives better for the average American, and inflation hits them the hardest. And, we don't know what's going to happen, but I'm sure there are a lot of people at the Fed right now who are looking at this, very closely to make sure that doesn't happen, because that will be a problem. It'll affect the people that you're trying to protect the most.
Michelle, you also see consumers change their behavior. If chicken prices are getting out of whack, they might buy tofu. God only knows why, but they will. and that they will make those kind of shifts in behavior to mitigate the damage. What do you see happening?
Well, first of all, I want to say that if you put the word vegan in front of anything that you're selling, it automatically means you're going to pay more, even if the cost to produce is less than chicken. Just want to say that. But essentially, I think what's overlooked in all of this is that we're talking about raw materials. You just start wave a magic wand and go poof. There's more corn, there's more sugar, there's more wheat, there's more soybeans, there's more steel, there's more copper. These things are mined and grown, and you have X factors involved with that. Weather is one, and geopolitics is another. So the fact is that we had a very low supply by design before the whole COVID hit. Right. And now with supply chain disruption and a low supply and some weather conditions, this could extend for another 2-3 years before we start to recycle and get new crops going and more mining, et cetera.
Wow.
And so that's really
scared me there. I wish we had more. I wish we had more time, but maybe it's a good idea that we don't. But you guys are coming back. I look forward to that. Also, the weather. It's going to get a little weird, and out west, it's going to get. All right, effective today, 4 states are stopping those extended federal jobless benefits. Not all jobless benefits, particularly state ones, just the ones that were extended to September, in the hope of freeing up more potential workers who seem to be in very short supply, as a lot of businesses are having the devil of a time hiring workers. Let's go to Michelle Schneider back with us, Adam Lashinsky back with us, last but not least, David Sacco back with us. Adam, the argument has been that if not for those extended benefits, these folks at home would almost assuredly have to be out looking for work. So because they didn't have to do that, businesses weren't able to find workers. What do you think of that argument?
Well, in the clear light of day, Neil, there clearly is a lot of validity to that argument. It was always the case that there were other factors that were keeping people out of the workplace, whether it was fear of COVID, whether it was the need to be home with children or others who needed their care. But the fact is that some people were doing better by accepting their unemployment benefits. So we're seeing that unwind, and some states will see it unwind completely by September, and in the near term, those payments have done a lot of good in helping people, stay on their feet, as it were.
Michelle, we do know that these are the first of these 4 states are the first of more than 20 that will, as this month ensues, end these extended benefits. How quickly then will that open up possible jobs and a market to these employers who are looking for workers?
Well, there are some people that are predicting that by July we'll get 150,000 more jobs filled, and by September 400,000. That would be the big surge when everything ends. So that will help. I mean, I think and I totally agree with what was just said, but I think the bigger thing right now is what sea change have we seen as a result of COVID in the workplace in general? Part of it we already saw before COVID, which was just really the digitalization of industry in general. And part of it, of course, is that the new normal is either work from home, sole proprietorship. Some retail investors, as we know, have flooded the market, people who never traded before. So I think it's going to be interesting to see what happens in this new world order in terms of businesses that will never come back and be able to get those jobs, and then how those businesses can adapt to this sea change going forward. And that's really what I'm keeping my eye on.
Yeah, I'm looking as well, David Sacco, at how many will return to work, presumably in the fall after Labor Day, when a lot of business, particularly the New York metropolitan area, said they will welcome workers back, albeit with some distancing provisions. So by that definition alone, there aren't going to be as many coming back. Play this out for me, what the fall looks like, not only for those workers, but maybe the economy.
Well, that's the last comment is a pretty important one, right? How much of this unemployment is structural in nature versus cyclical in nature, and how many businesses have changed the way they do business, and now there's a little bit of a mismatch between skill sets and what the companies need. So, where it's cyclical and where demand is picking up and companies need to bring back employees, you'll see that. But where companies have changed the business model, you won't. So I suspect we've seen the highest rate of job increases that we're going to see for a while. And that's where the policy question really becomes a big one. Is this structural or is it cyclical? And if it's structural, it's probably going to last for a little while longer, and the pace of job growth will probably slow a little bit over the next few months.
In the meantime, some employers, as you know, Adam, are forcing the issue. I believe largely in investment banking, where Goldman Sachs and a host of others want all their workers back in the offices. In fact, I believe in the case of Goldman, requiring proof that they've been vaccinated in the process. So this is going to be a bit of a bumpy ride, and some are going to argue you're violating my privacy rights and all. How do you think this sorts out?
Well, you used the word bumpy. I totally agree. The way I've been describing this is messy. We're going to see a messy situation in this knowledge workforce. I couldn't help thinking that come September, October, restaurants are not going to be facing this problem of trying to hire wait staff or cooks or what have you, because the people who would typically have filled those jobs are going to want to fill those jobs. But I think, giant corporations, their employees are complaining, I liked working from home, and I think there's going to be an extended conversation / argument, Neil, in the coming months. That argument could last for, I don't know, 6 to 18 months. It's not going to be quick.
Michelle, I've told my own employer I want to continue doing imaginary shows. I don't want to come in. And they said, go ahead, you could do imaginary shows, Neil, and have at it. My point is, there are going to be a lot of workers who protest, right? I wonder how that gets sorted out.
Well, I think it's going to be a matter of how far their protest can go before they are at risk of losing their job, because people are re-entering the workspace and there'll be some level of competition. And of course, as David just said, it's really going to be a matter of how long this whole thing gets restructured. But what will also be interesting is what we're already starting to see is the incentives that employers are offering people to not only come back to work, but to come to the office. And so that's another area I think could be really interesting, is how much partnering companies, small businesses in particular, will offer their employees so that they feel more incentivized to come back to work and to be part of the growth of the business. So I'm hoping that actually comes out to be one of the results. I know here we have a small business, and that's what we're doing with our employees.
All right. Thank you, Michelle. Final word on that. Adam, I want to thank you. David, thank you very much for joining my imaginary show. It always helps. We have a lot coming up. Oh, I'm on the air. Forget it.